America once loved chaos. Loud chaos. Violent chaos. The kind of chaos that laughed while everything around it burned. And strangely enough, one of the biggest symbols of that chaos wasn't a politician. Wasn't a soldier. Wasn't even human. It was a cartoon bird. A screaming, laughing, completely unpredictable woodpecker who seemed impossible to control. You probably remember Woody Woodpecker as harmless childhood nostalgia. That laugh, that energy, that weird, chaotic personality that somehow felt different from every other cartoon character. But here's the strange part. The Woody most people remember is not the same Woody America originally fell in love with. Because something happened. Somewhere between explosions, overseas wartime fear changing audiences, and an America desperately trying to rebuild itself, Woody changed. The wild cartoon menace of the early 1940s slowly became softer, cleaner, safer, less dangerous. And the question is why? Because unlike many cartoon stars of his era, Woody wasn't just entertaining people. He was reflecting them. Reflecting an America under pressure. An America shaped by war. And the deeper you look into Woody's history, the stranger the story becomes. Because this isn't just about one cartoon character. It's about how World War II quietly reshaped entertainment itself. How war changed humor, changed childhood, changed what people considered acceptable, and maybe changed cartoons forever, including one loud woodpecker nobody could control. To understand Woody Woodpecker, we first need to understand the world that created him. Because Woody didn't appear by accident. He appeared at exactly the right moment in American history. The late 1930s were uneasy. America was still recovering from the Great Depression. Millions had struggled financially. Families were exhausted. Fear lingered quietly in the background. And overseas something dark was growing. War. In Europe, tensions exploded. Headlines became darker. People spoke about dictators, military invasions, political fear. At first, many Americans tried ignoring it. The war felt far away, like someone else's problem. But even before America officially entered World War II, people could feel something changing. And during uncertain times, people look for escape. That's where Hollywood stepped in. Movies exploded. Radio became part of everyday life. And cartoons? Cartoons became emotional relief. A few minutes of laughter before reality returned. But animation in the 1930s wasn't all the same. There were different philosophies. Disney focused on polish, beauty, emotion. Characters were charming, controlled, safe. Even during chaos, everything still felt elegant. Then came another style. Louder, messier, faster. Studios like Warner Brothers and Universal started embracing comedy that felt unpredictable. Characters screamed. Things exploded. Rules didn't matter. And audiences loved it. Because chaos felt funny. Especially when real life felt heavy. But nobody represented pure cartoon chaos quite like the character who would soon arrive. Woody Woodpecker. And oddly enough, his creation may have started with pure annoyance. Because according to one famous story, Woody wasn't born inside a corporate meeting room. He may have been inspired by a real bird driving someone completely insane. And if that story is true, one of animation's loudest legends started with frustration. Not inspiration. Not genius. Frustration. The man behind Woody was animator Walter Lantz. Unlike Disney, Walter Lantz wasn't chasing perfection. He wanted energy, comedy, movement, something memorable, something audiences wouldn't forget. And according to animation history, during his honeymoon trip with his wife, a noisy woodpecker reportedly kept disturbing them. Instead of becoming furious, Lantz supposedly became fascinated. That bird had attitude, energy, persistence, and most importantly, it was impossible to ignore. Sound familiar? By 1940, Woody Woodpecker officially entered American theaters. And audiences immediately noticed something different. Because Woody didn't behave like traditional cartoon characters. He didn't politely entertain. He attacked situations. He caused problems. Destroyed things. Ignored rules. Mocked authority. And honestly, sometimes he felt borderline insane. He screamed, laughed at inappropriate moments, created chaos for absolutely no reason. Compared to Disney characters, Woody felt dangerous. And that's exactly what made him work. Because early Woody had edge. Real edge. He wasn't polished. He felt unpredictable. Like something might actually go wrong. And for audiences living through uncertainty, that energy felt weirdly satisfying. Especially as the world slowly drifted closer to war. Because even before America entered World War II, tension was rising. People felt nervous. The future felt unclear. And suddenly a screaming cartoon bird refusing to obey anyone? That felt strangely comforting. But then came 1941, and everything changed overnight. December 7th. Pearl Harbor. America entered World War II. Fear spread instantly. Young men left for war. Families changed forever. Factories transformed. Everyday life transformed. And entertainment transformed too. Because during wartime everything mattered. Movies mattered. Radio mattered. Advertising mattered. And cartoons? Cartoons suddenly became far more important than most people realized. Because governments understood something powerful. People listened to stories. Especially funny stories. Laughter lowers defenses. Humor spreads messages faster than speeches ever could. That's why wartime cartoons exploded. Suddenly animation became political, patriotic, sometimes even propagandistic. Disney helped create wartime films. Warner Brothers mocked enemy leaders. Cartoon characters promoted war bonds, military recruitment, national unity. Animation became part of America's emotional engine. But here's where Woody's story gets strange. Unlike Donald Duck or Bugs Bunny, Woody wasn't deeply tied to direct wartime propaganda. At least not in obvious ways. So how exactly could World War II have changed him? The answer is more complicated. Because war changed something even bigger than cartoons. It changed people. And once people changed, cartoons had to change too. Wars don't only reshape nations. They reshape culture. And after several years of global conflict, Americans were no longer the same people they had been in 1940. Millions of soldiers eventually returned home. Families tried rebuilding normal lives. The country entered a new era. An era built around stability, security, predictability. After years of uncertainty, people wanted peace. And that desire slowly began influencing entertainment. Especially entertainment aimed at children. Because during the war, many cartoon viewers were adults. Cartoons played before feature films in theaters. Everyone watched them. Children, teenagers, soldiers, parents. But after the war, something important happened. Television arrived. And television changed everything. Suddenly cartoons weren't just short theatrical experiences. They were becoming household entertainment. Living room entertainment. Family entertainment. And family entertainment required different rules. Networks became more cautious. Advertisers became more cautious. Studios became more cautious. The wild, destructive energy that had once made characters famous started creating new concerns. Parents complained about violence. Executives worried about public image. Broadcasters wanted characters that felt friendlier, safer, more marketable. And Woody Woodpecker stood directly in the middle of that transition. Because early Woody wasn't exactly a role model. He lied, cheated, provoked people, destroyed property, started fights. Sometimes he seemed to enjoy causing suffering just for fun. Audiences in the early 1940s laughed. But by the late 1940s and early 1950s, the cultural mood was shifting. And suddenly that same behavior looked different. Studios began asking a difficult question. What happens when the troublemaker becomes too much trouble? The answer was simple. You change him. Slowly, carefully, almost invisibly. And that's exactly what happened. If you compare the earliest Woody cartoons with later versions, the difference is shocking. The original Woody looks almost feral. His design is rougher, His movements are more aggressive. His expressions feel unhinged. His laughter sounds less playful and more like a warning. He feels like a force of nature, cartoon tornado. But over time, artists softened him. His appearance became cleaner. His behavior became friendlier. His motivations became easier to understand. Instead of creating chaos simply because he enjoyed it, he increasingly became a character reacting to situations. That sounds subtle, but it fundamentally changes how an audience sees someone. The early Woody caused problems. The later Woody encountered problems. One version is the aggressor. The other is the hero. And that distinction mattered, because American entertainment was moving toward clearer moral storytelling. Good guys, bad guys, happy endings. Characters audiences could trust. The transformation wasn't unique to Woody. Many animated characters experienced similar changes. Studios learned that long-term popularity often came from familiarity rather than unpredictability. Wild characters generated attention. Friendly characters generated merchandise, television deals, brand loyalty, and ultimately, profit. So the screaming cartoon anarchist slowly evolved into something else. Not entirely different, but different enough. The edges were sanded down, the danger reduced, the unpredictability controlled, and most viewers never noticed, because the transformation happened gradually, year after year, cartoon after cartoon, until the original version almost disappeared from public memory. But here's the fascinating part. The change may have saved Woody's career, and at the exact same time, it may have cost him something irreplaceable, because the qualities that made him safer were also the qualities that made him less unique. And that's where the debate begins. When people discuss World War II's impact on entertainment, they often focus on obvious examples: propaganda films, military advertising, political messaging. But some of the biggest effects were indirect. War changes expectations. War changes values. War changes what societies reward. And after World War II, America increasingly embraced order. Suburbs expanded. Consumer culture exploded. Families sought stability. Institutions emphasized conformity. Being reliable became valuable. Being predictable became valuable. Even humor changed. Not overnight, but gradually. The anarchic energy that dominated many pre-war and wartime cartoons slowly gave way to more structured storytelling. Characters became brands. Brands became businesses. Businesses avoided unnecessary risks. And in that environment, a character like Woody Woodpecker couldn't remain completely wild forever. The culture that created him was disappearing. The audience that originally embraced him was aging. A new generation was arriving. A generation growing up in a very different America. And television became their window to the world. The result? Woody survived. Many cartoon stars didn't. But survival came with compromises. Because staying relevant often requires adaptation. And adaptation almost always changes identity. Ask someone today about Woody Woodpecker. Most won't describe the chaotic troublemaker from 1940. They'll remember the cleaner version, the television version, the version rerun for decades, the version preserved in public memory. And that's one of history's strangest tricks. Sometimes the version that becomes famous isn't the original version. It's the version that survived. The version shaped by cultural pressure. The version polished for a changing world. And Woody is a perfect example. His story isn't simply about animation. It's about adaptation. A character born from chaos, modified by circumstance, reshaped by an era, and carried into the future by becoming something different from what he once was. Without World War II, would Woody have evolved the same way? Maybe, maybe not. History rarely gives us alternate timelines. But the timing is difficult to ignore. America changed. Entertainment changed. Audiences changed. And Woody changed with them. Today, Woody Woodpecker remains one of animation's most recognizable icons. That unforgettable laugh still echoes across generations. But hidden behind that laugh is a story most people never hear. A story about war, culture, fear, recovery, and the invisible forces that shape the characters we love. Because cartoons don't exist outside history. They absorb it, reflect it, carry it forward. And sometimes, if you look closely enough, a loud cartoon bird can tell you far more about America than you ever expected. So the next time you hear Woody's laugh, remember this: you're not just hearing a cartoon. You're hearing the sound of an era that changed forever. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the hidden history behind classic cartoons, don't forget to subscribe for more stories where animation and history collide.